Good morning, my friends. I'm Pastor Ben Hayes from First Baptist Church, Dadeville, Alabama, bringing you our thought for the day on this fantastic Friday. You want to talk about fantastic? This week has been amazing with Vacation Bible School. The workers, the teachers, the atmosphere, the fun. Family night last night was just amazing. I'm so blessed. And remember today, we're going to be sharing the gospel with our children. So pray that God would give them receptive hearts, understanding spirits, and that we would be clear in our presentation of the gospel. I know that God is going to bless today. So thank you in advance for praying. And don't forget Sunday morning, 8:45 Bible study, 10 a.m. worship. God's got a plan. You need to be here. We're in 1 Corinthians chapter 3. Paul's talking about that wonderful passage where he says, look, it's not about me. It's not about Apollos. He said, understand, I planted the seed. Apollos watered the seed, but it was God that gave the increase. We work together, he said. And as such, we will each receive our reward according to the labor that we put into it. And that's true for you and me as well. God has called us all to do our part. And that's the key here, to do our part in building the kingdom. We don't have to build it by ourselves. We each do our part based on the gifts that he's given us. And God is the one who causes the kingdom to grow and to expand and for all of those wonderful things to happen. And that's good. Now listen to what he says, picking up in verse 9. He says, for we are God's fellow workers. Think about that. We're God's fellow workers. We are in this with God. Imagine yourself working in a field, doing planting or harvesting, and you're out there and you're doing your work, and God is right there with you. We are God's fellow workers. We are working with him in the field of evangelism, in the field of discipleship, in the field of ministry, in the field of missions. We are in that field working with him, and he is working with us. But then he says, not only are we God's fellow workers, he says, you are God's field. So while we are working with him, he is working in us. We are the field that he's working in. He is helping us to become that Christian man or woman that we need to be. He is empowering us. He is growing us. He is teaching us. He is drawing us closer to himself. He is giving us everything that we need to be that godly man, that godly woman he's called us to be. And then look at what he says. He says, not only are you God's field, you're God's building. It's as if we're that building that God is putting those bricks into place, those stones into place, brick by brick, mortar after mortar, just bringing us to that point where we become that solid Christian man, woman that he has called us to be, so that we can continue to serve him and work with him. We are God's fellow workers. We are God's field. We are God's building. And he is loving us and strengthening us and guiding us to that point that one day we are going to be exactly like his son, Jesus Christ. Now look at what he says, verse 10. Paul says, now, this is who you are. Then Paul says, according to the grace of God, which was given to me, the Apostle Paul, as a wise master builder, I have laid the foundation, and another builds on it. This is what I was talking about the other day. Pastors come in and they spend whatever time God has placed them in the church. They grow the church, they build the church, and then they move on. God brings someone else in to build on that foundation. That's what Paul is talking about. Paul says, I came there and I invested in you, and I showed you how to come to know Christ as Savior. I got the church going, and I laid this solid foundation. And now these other pastors are coming in and they're building on that foundation. It's not that they're better than I was. It's not that they're worse than I was. It's just that they're doing a different job than I was doing. And it's this constant creation that God does in his church as he moves pastors in with certain tasks and abilities and opportunities to do what he's done. And that's what makes the church so amazing as a new pastor comes in and as new people come in. We build on that foundation. And then he says, but let each one take heed how he builds on it. Now, this is important because I got to tell you, every pastor has a responsibility, an obligation to take what has been given him and to grow it in the grace and the knowledge of Jesus Christ, to make it the church that God is calling it to be. And we will answer to God for what we've done or what we've not done. And that is an amazing thought, to know that we'll stand before God and give answer to Him for how we have treated His church, how we've grown His church, how we've ministered in His church. Think about that. And pray for your pastor. Pray that he'll have wisdom and strength and the ability to do what God is calling him to do. And join him in the work. Be blessed. See you here on Sunday.